Hello there, and welcome to the Sabre Biometrics Integrator Biotime to Sabre integration walkthrough video. We're going to get started with this integration by clicking on the Biotime to Sabre button. We then get presented with a pop-up dialog that wants us to enter our Biotime API login credentials. This is basically the credentials you would use to sign in on your Biotime server. So in our case, it does come pre-populated with admin, and in our case our username is admin, so we're going to enter that, and our password is going to be entered as such. We can say OK, and now we come to our enter API URL. This URL is the same URL as your Biotime website. So whether it's the website name or the IP address, in our case it's our IP address, so we are going to just paste that in. Note the HTTP prefix on the IP address, that is important, and the port can be added using the standard port notation such as such, but we will not be using a port in this case. From here we can say OK. And now we are presented with an enter authentication token endpoint. This endpoint does come pre-populated, as you can see, and this should not be changed unless explicitly changed on the Biotime server side. So for the vast majority, this default value will remain the same and should only be changed if it so happens that it changes on the Biotime server side API. So we can leave this as is and say OK, and we should get presented, there we go, we got presented with an authentication successful dialog, and we have successfully acquired the login token. So what this means is important to note that the password, our username and password that we had entered, only the username is stored at all on our machine. That password, our Biotime password, is not stored at all on the machine that the integrator is running on. This is because we are not actually logging in with those credentials each time. We are just simply acquiring a login token from the Biotime API itself, and this token will remain valid for a set amount of time before needing a refresh, in which case the integrator does have a method to handle that automatically. And should the token be not even within the refresh state, then a user will have to go through this process again of signing in. So let us click OK to continue. And now we are presented with the ZK Biotime to Sabre integration screen. So we have a configuration portion here, which basically is the choose folder to drop the DAT file in. So this is the folder, our data file, with all the clockings that we are pulling from the Biotime API or the Biotime server. This is the folder where all those clockings are going to be put into. It will be put into a file in this folder that we are selecting. So we can say browse, and we can go and find a folder. So here we have our folder. Next, we have a API configuration section. This section should not be tampered with at all. It is only for advanced users and mainly for very specific adjustments to the actual requests from the API itself, from Biotime's end. So if we wanted to put in specific parameters and specific resources to pull data from, we could, but we are not going to touch this right now, and the normal user should not even be bothered with going through this, as it is not necessary. The next section we have is a Clockings Pull option. We have the from date, to date, and two checkboxes here, and a data was last pulled for field. This section here basically determines the date range between the clockings what the date ranges you're pulling for. So for example, we can pull from today's date till today's date, or we can pull from, for example, let's go to February 1st of February till the 10th of February. So we can just go there, and let's just go to the 10th. So now we have a date range to pull for. This brings me now to the Clockings data pool type section. So we have two types of data pools. We have a manual data pool and an automatic data pool. A manual data pool, obviously, as the name suggests, we will have to click this button each time we want to pull Biotime data. An automatic data pool, on the other hand, will pull the Biotime data after a set interval in seconds. So, please note that as well, that if the interval is set to 0, Autopool is disabled and the checkbox cannot be selected. So as soon as we increment this, for example, there we go, we can now select Autopool. So let us do a manual data pool, and we should see a result coming into the status box here, and our loading icon as well, to show us that the application is working. So let us go ahead and pull the Biotime data. And as you can see, we've successfully established connection and we are finding clockings. So this will run until it's found all the pages of clockings for that selected date period, and thereafter it will present us with the clockings that have been pulled and generate a file in this directory that we have selected at the top here. So we can let this go. And as you can see, we've successfully pulled the data, and we can note here that data was last pulled for this period here, as we see. And in our status box, we now can see that all the clockings were pulled, and we have a message that says successfully generated the file in that folder. So now the exact same process occurs for the Autopool, except this is just on an automated loop. So we can set this for 5 seconds, and do note now, if we click on Autopool, what will happen is it will pull for this date range here. So if I have to click Autopool now, we should see that date range getting pulled as well. And there we go, and you can see it keeps going on and on and on. So now let's go through the pull all clockings and the pull yesterday and today's clockings. Do note that this will finish up. I have unchecked the Autopool, so once this finishes up, the Autopool will stop running. As you can see now. So let's go through the pull all clockings and pull yesterday and today's clockings checkboxes. The pull all clockings will pull all available clockings on the Biotime server, which can be quite time consuming, as there can be many clockings. So please give it the necessary time if you are selecting this option. It will show the loading indicator here and the process as we saw before. And we have a pull yesterday and today's clockings. This is simply just a shortcut that sets the dates to yesterday and today, and you cannot, should one of these checkboxes be ticked, we cannot edit the date ranges, as they are giving a specified date range themselves. So now that we have gone through that, if we were to pull yesterday and today's clockings, knowing that there haven't been any, we should see that no clockings no clockings were able to be pulled. So if we pull this date range now, as you can see, no clocks found for selected date range, and this also works on the Autopool as such. So that's all there is to it. The Biotime Sabre integration does have all these values saved as well. So should we close this, for example, so let's close that and we can open it again, and you'll note that our checkboxes state was saved, the date range obviously is saved, and the folder we selected is saved, and there's a whole lot of other values as well that have been saved in the background in order for us to just click and go, you know, plug and play, as you can see. All values that are saved are also saved into the INI, and that's where they are able to be edited should you want to get more fine control or specific control over something within the software itself. And the INI will be found in the same directory as the exe of the application, of the Sabre Biometrics Integrator application. So yeah, that's all there is to it. Thank you very much for watching.